The Four Seasons Manhattan Ballroom sparkled with the brilliance of New York's elite. Crystal chandeliers cast diamonds of light across socialites' jewels, while Wall Street executives discussed billion-dollar mergers between sips of Dom Perignon 2012. Emma Richardson nervously adjusted the black cocktail dress borrowed from her best friend and took a deep breath. How had a simple public school teacher from Brooklyn managed to infiltrate the most exclusive event of the year? Easy. She'd lied outrageously on her resume and landed a temporary job as an interpreter for the evening. "Are you all right, dear?" The honeyed voice of Victoria Ashford, wife of New York's senior senator, cut through her thoughts. "You look a little lost." Emma forced a smile. Victoria was the type of woman who could make a compliment sound like an insult with the precision of a sharpened blade. "Just admiring the decor," Emma lied, gripping her glass of sparkling water that she was pretending was champagne. She couldn't afford to lose focus by drinking alcohol. "Oh, of course," Victoria laughed, a crystalline sound sharp as clinking expensive glasses. "I imagine it's quite different from what you're used to. By the way, I don't see you with an escort." "Did you come alone?" The condescending tone made Emma's blood boil. Around them, other women approached like vultures sensing social carrion, all with that hungry gleam in their eyes that meant potential gossip. "Actually," Emma began, but her mind betrayed her. She couldn't stand that look of pity mixed with malicious satisfaction. "My fiancé is closing a deal. You know how it is with powerful men, they never stop working." "Fiancé?" Victoria's eyes lit up with predatory curiosity. "How interesting. And who's the lucky man? Someone we know?" "Shoot." Emma swept the ballroom with her gaze, desperately searching for an escape route. Panic rose in her throat like bitter bile. That's when she saw him. Tall, broad shoulders filling a perfectly tailored Armani tuxedo. Dark brown hair slightly mussed, as if he'd run his hands through it during a tense meeting. Even in profile, it was impossible to miss the sharp jawline and the aura of authority that surrounded him like a second skin. And he was alone, observing the ballroom with the bored expression of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. "That one there," Emma pointed discreetly, praying to every star in the sky that he wouldn't turn around. "Nathaniel Blake." The silence that followed was so profound that Emma could hear her own heart hammering against her ribs like a war drum. Victoria choked on her champagne. The other women murmured among themselves with wide eyes. You're engaged to Nathaniel Blake?" Victoria whispered, as if speaking the name of an ancient deity. "Problem?" The deep, slightly husky voice sounded behind Emma, making every nerve ending in her body go on high alert. She turned slowly, as if facing a predator. And in a way, that's exactly what it was. Nathaniel Blake was even more impressive up close. Storm gray eyes analyzed her with an intensity that made her knees weak. A slow, dangerous smile curved his lips as he approached with the lethal grace of a shark. "Darling," he murmured, placing a possessive hand on Emma's waist. The burn of his touch traveled through the thin fabric of her dress like liquid fire. "Sorry I'm late. The call with London took longer than expected." Emma opened her mouth, but no sound came out. He knew. Obviously, he'd heard the conversation and was playing along with the lie. "Why?" "Nathaniel." Victoria regained her composure, but still looked in complete shock. "What a wonderful surprise. We had no idea you were engaged. We prefer to keep our private life away from the media spotlight." His fingers tightened slightly on Emma's waist. A warning, a promise, or maybe both. "Don't we, sweetheart?" The word came out so naturally, with that slight accent that betrayed his elite preparatory school education, that Emma almost believed it. Almost. "Of course," she managed to murmur, her voice coming out huskier than intended. "Nate is very private when it comes to our relationship." He chuckled low, the sound vibrating against her ear as he leaned in to whisper, "We need to talk. Now." It wasn't a request. It was an order disguised as a gentle suggestion. "If you'll excuse us." Nathaniel smiled at the group of stunned women, that smile that had probably sealed millions in deals. I'm going to steal my fiancé for a dance. Before Emma could protest, he led her to the dance floor. The soft waltz contrasted dramatically with the electric tension crackling between them like exposed wires. "So," Nathaniel murmured as he guided her through the steps with the perfection of someone who'd learned to dance before learning to walk. Emma Elizabeth Richardson, 28 years old, lives in Brooklyn with her best friend, teaches at 3 different public schools to manage her student loan payments. "What exactly are you doing at my charity gala using my name as a shield?" Emma's blood turned to ice in her veins. "How did you—" "I know everything about everyone who enters here, sweetheart. Security is a priority when you have as many zeros in your bank account as I do." His eyes pierced her like lasers. "The question that intrigues me is, why did you lie?" Emma swallowed hard, tasting the bitter flavor of desperation. They were being condescending and you invented an engagement to me." His voice was dangerously soft, like velvet covering steel. "Do you have any idea what my reputation is worth, Emma?" "I can explain. $3 billion. He spun her gracefully, using the movement to pull her closer to his solid chest. "That's the value of the acquisition I'm closing this week. An acquisition that depends entirely on my European partner's confidence in my personal stability and long-term leadership capacity." Emma closed her eyes, imagining the headlines. "Poor teacher invents engagement with tech billionaire." Her career was over before it had really begun. "I'll leave," she whispered, opening her eyes to meet that penetrating gaze. "I'll explain to them that it was a misunderstanding, that No." The word came out so firm and definitive that she stopped breathing for a second. Nathaniel was smiling, but there was something predatory and calculating in that smile. "Actually, you just gave me the perfect solution to a very expensive problem." "What problem?" "My mother is threatening to disinherit me and sell her company shares if I don't settle down by Christmas." He paused, letting the words sink in like stones in still water. "And I just found my perfect fiancé." The music stopped, but they remained standing in the center of the dance floor, looking at each other as if the rest of the world had disappeared. "You're completely insane," Emma murmured. "Probably. Insanity tends to accompany this level of wealth." Nathaniel tilted his head, studying her face as if she were an interesting puzzle. "The question is, are you willing to be crazy with me?" Around them, New York's elite watched with barely disguised fascination. Victoria Ashford had her iPhone in hand, probably already sending the gossip to half the East Coast. There was no going back, not after tonight. What exactly would be the deal? Emma heard herself asking, as if the voice belonged to someone else. His smile widened, transforming into something genuinely amused for the first time that evening. 6 months. You pretend to be my fiancé. I pay off all your student loan debts and give you enough money to open that charter school you dream of in Staten Island. How do you know about... I told you I know everything, darling. He offered his arm with the natural elegance of old American aristocracy. So, Miss Richardson, do you accept being my fake fiancé? Emma looked around at the jewelry that cost more than a lifetime's salary, at the fake smiles masked by Botox and plastic surgery, at the golden world that would never truly be hers. Then she looked at Nathaniel Blake, the most powerful man in the ballroom, heir to a tech empire, who was watching her as if she were the only interesting person in the entire event. Why me? She asked, needing to know. Because, he murmured, lowering his head until his lips almost touched her ear, sending shivers down her spine. You're the first person in years who's managed to surprise me, and I loved the feeling. His breath made her skin tingle, and Emma knew, with the terrifying certainty of a woman who recognizes her own destiny when she sees it, that she was about to commit the most delicious mistake of her life. All right, she whispered. I accept. The smile Nathaniel gave her was slow, dangerous, and completely devastating. Then, my dear fiancé, he said loud enough for others to hear, how about we have dinner tomorrow night to discuss our wedding preparations? And so, in Manhattan's most elegant ballroom, An impulsive lie transformed into the most dangerous deal of Emma Richardson's life. What she didn't know was that Nathaniel Blake had never, in his entire privileged life, made a deal he didn't intend to win. And this time, he wasn't just interested in the money. The penthouse office of Blake Industries occupied the entire 52nd floor of one of Manhattan's most prestigious buildings. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Central Park and the Hudson River, but Emma couldn't focus on the stunning scenery. She was too busy trying not to hyperventilate. "You're 15 minutes late," Nathaniel said without looking up from the contract spread across his mahogany desk. Even in the morning light streaming through the windows, he was devastatingly handsome. The perfectly tailored navy suit probably cost more than her monthly rent. The security downstairs took forever to verify my identity, and then the elevator. "I don't accept excuses, Emma. If we're going to do this, you need to understand that punctuality isn't negotiable in my world." He finally looked up, those storm-gray eyes assessing her simple wrap dress with an expression she couldn't read. "We have considerable ground to cover." She approached the desk cautiously, hyper-aware of every sound her modest heels made on the polished marble floor. The contract was thick enough to use as a doorstop. "Is all of this really necessary?" she asked, settling into the buttery leather chair across from him. "Every single detail matters. My family, my business partners, the media, they'll all be scrutinizing us under a microscope." Nathaniel leaned back, fingers steepled in a gesture that screamed executive authority. "One slip up and this entire arrangement crumbles like a house of cards." Emma picked up the first page, her eyes widening at the dense legal jargon. "This is more complex than my apartment lease. Your apartment lease doesn't involve $3 billion and 4 generations of family legacy." His voice was matter-of-fact, but she caught the slight tension in his jaw. "Read Section 4 carefully." She flipped through the pages, scanning until she found it. Public appearances, social events, family dinners, weekend retreats. "Nathaniel, this reads like a full-time job description." Because it essentially is. He stood and walked to the windows, hands clasped behind his back in a pose that emphasized his broad shoulders. "My mother, Catherine Blake, is what you might diplomatically call formidable. She's been orchestrating my love life for the past 6 years with the precision of a military campaign. And none of her candidates worked out? They were all flawless on paper." He turned back to her, something sardonic flickering in his expression. "Ivy League educations, trust funds, social connections that read like a who's who of American aristocracy. Everything my mother believed I needed in a wife. But they bored me to absolute tears." The admission seemed to surprise him as much as it did her. Conversations about charity luncheons and yacht club memberships. No passion, no fire, no authenticity. Emma felt heat creep up her neck. "And you think I'm authentic? You managed to infiltrate the most exclusive charity gala in New York and convince half of Manhattan's elite that you were engaged to me within 15 minutes. A ghost of a smile played at his lips. "That takes either remarkable creativity or spectacular audacity. That was pure desperation, not creativity." "Sometimes they're identical." He returned to his desk, pulling out a sleek tablet. "We need to construct your background story. How did we meet?" "I have no idea. You're the mastermind here. We met at a literacy fundraiser 6 months ago. You were there representing one of your schools. They were receiving a grant. I was immediately captivated by your passion for education reform." His fingers moved across the tablet screen with practiced efficiency. "It's close enough to reality to be believable under scrutiny. You've really thought this through completely." "I always do." Nathaniel looked up at her, and for a moment, his carefully controlled expression shifted. "There's something else you should understand. My business partner, James Chen, is flying in from San Francisco tomorrow. The acquisition we're negotiating, it's not just about money. What's it really about? Legacy. My great-grandfather started this company with nothing but determination and a small loan from his brother. My grandfather expanded it across the country. My father took it international. Now I have the opportunity to make it truly revolutionary. His voice carried a weight that made her straighten in her chair. But James is old school. He believes in traditional values, family stability. A committed relationship signals that I'm ready for long-term strategic partnerships. Understanding dawned slowly. So this isn't just about appeasing your mother. My mother represents the immediate pressure. James represents the future necessity. Nathaniel saved whatever he'd been working on and closed the tablet. Which brings us to the most crucial element of our agreement. He opened a desk drawer and withdrew a small midnight blue velvet box. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Is that... Open it. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted the lid. Inside sat the most exquisite ring she'd ever seen, a stunning sapphire surrounded by diamonds set in vintage platinum. It was elegant, sophisticated, and probably worth more than her annual salary multiplied by 10. It belonged to my great-grandmother, Nathaniel said quietly. She would have appreciated you. How can you possibly know that? Because she came from humble beginnings too. Married my great-grandfather against her family's fierce objections, and helped him build everything we have today. He took the ring from the box, his movements careful and reverent. She always said the most interesting people were those who had to fight for their place in the world. Before Emma could protest, he was kneeling beside her chair, taking her left hand in his. The contact sent electricity shooting up her arm like a live wire. "This is just for appearances," she said quickly, but her voice came out breathless. Of course. His thumb traced across her knuckles as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been crafted specifically for her, purely for show. But the way he looked at her as he said it made her wonder if he was trying to convince her or himself. A sharp knock at the door interrupted the charged moment. Nathaniel stood smoothly, his professional mask sliding back into place like armor. "Come in, Margaret." A woman in her early 50s entered, her silver hair pulled back in an elegant chignon. She moved with the efficiency of someone who'd been managing powerful people's lives for decades. "Your mother called," Margaret announced without preamble. "She's heard about the engagement." Emma's stomach plummeted. "Already?" "Catherine Blake has her own intelligence network that rivals the CIA," Margaret said dryly. "She wants to meet Emma. Tonight." Nathaniel rubbed his temples. "Of course she does. Where?" "Dinner at the family estate in Greenwich. 7 o'clock sharp. And Nathaniel?" Margaret's expression softened slightly. "She's actually excited. I haven't heard her this animated since—" "Thank you, Margaret. Please arrange a car for Emma this afternoon. She'll need time to prepare." After Margaret left, silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Emma stared at the ring on her finger, its weight feeling both foreign and somehow perfectly right. "Your mother is going to see right through me," she said finally. "Possibly." Nathaniel's honesty was startling. "She's going to test you, probe for inconsistencies in your story. She might even hire a private investigator to verify your background." "This is absolute madness." Emma stood abruptly, pacing to the windows. "I can't do this. I'm terrible at deception, and I definitely can't fool your mother." "You don't have to deceive anyone." Nathaniel moved behind her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "You just have to be yourself. My self isn't good enough for your world. My world is populated by people who inherited their worth. You earned yours through hard work and determination." His reflection appeared next to hers in the window glass. "Besides, it's too late to retreat now." "Why?" He pointed to the street below, where a small crowd of photographers had gathered outside the building like circling vultures. "Someone leaked photos from last night. By tomorrow morning, our engagement will be front-page news in every major publication." Emma's legs felt suddenly weak. "Oh, no." "Hey." Nathaniel turned her to face him, his hands warm and steady on her shoulders. "We can handle this together. 6 months, remember? You help me secure the acquisition and convince my mother I'm settling down. I help you eliminate your debts and fund that school. And then what happens? We just break up and go back to our separate lives?" Something flickered across his face, too quick to interpret properly. Then we returned to our respective worlds. The words should have been reassuring. Instead, they left an unexpected hollow feeling in her chest. "I should go home and prepare for tonight," she said, stepping out of his grip. "Figure out how to survive dinner with American royalty." "Emma." She turned back at the door. "For what it's worth, my great-grandmother really would have liked you." The smile he gave her was softer than any she'd seen from him, and it made her forget, just for a moment, that this was all an elaborate performance. As the elevator descended toward the lobby full of waiting paparazzi, Emma caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. The sapphire ring caught the light, sending blue sparkles across her face like scattered starlight. For the first time in her life, she looked like she belonged in a fairy tale. She just hoped it wouldn't end like most fairy tales did, with someone getting their heart shattered into a million pieces. The Blake family estate sprawled across 20 pristine acres in Greenwich, Connecticut, its Georgian architecture, a testament to 4 generations of American wealth. As the sleek black car wound up the circular cobblestone drive, Emma pressed her palms against the silk dress Margaret had delivered that afternoon, a midnight blue sheath that probably cost more than Emma's monthly salary, complete with matching designer heels and pearl earrings. Deep breaths, she murmured to herself, practicing the backstory Nathaniel had drilled into her during their afternoon phone call. Met at literacy fundraiser, bonded over education reform, dated quietly for 6 months, engaged for 3 weeks. The driver opened her door with practiced precision, and Emma stepped onto the marble entrance flanked by towering oak trees. Before she could even approach the imposing mahogany doors, they swung open as if by magic. "You must be Emma." Catherine Blake was nothing like what Emma had expected. Instead of the intimidating steel magnolia she'd imagined, Nathaniel's mother was elegant in the effortless way of women born to privilege. Her silver hair was styled in sophisticated waves, her navy Chanel suit was perfectly tailored, and her smile seemed genuinely warm. "Mrs. Blake, it's such an honor." "Catherine, please, dear." She took Emma's hands, her eyes immediately drawn to the sapphire engagement ring with obvious delight. "My grandmother's ring looks absolutely perfect on you. Nathaniel always said he'd only give it to someone truly special." Did he really say that? Emma filed that information away for later analysis. "It's an incredible honor to wear it," she said, hoping she sounded more confident than she felt. "Come, let me show you around before Nathaniel arrives. He's running behind schedule, some urgent matter with the Hong Kong markets." Catherine linked their arms with surprising warmth. Men and their business obsessions. Sometimes I think they forget there are more important things in life than quarterly reports. The house was a masterpiece of understated luxury. Priceless artwork lined the walls, and every piece of furniture looked like it belonged in the Metropolitan Museum. But Catherine didn't give her the formal tour Emma expected. Instead, she led her to a sun-drenched conservatory filled with exotic orchids. "This was my sanctuary when the boys were young," Catherine said, settling gracefully into a cushioned wicker chair. "Nathaniel and his brother would tear through the house like hurricanes, but they knew this room was absolutely forbidden territory." "Nathaniel has a brother?" "Had." Catherine's expression clouded briefly. "David died in a skiing accident 8 years ago. He was only 26. "I'm so terribly sorry. Nathaniel never mentioned—" "He rarely talks about it. David was the natural charmer, the one who could make anyone laugh within 5 minutes of meeting them. Nathaniel. After the accident, he became incredibly focused on work, almost obsessively controlled." Catherine studied Emma carefully. "Until recently, apparently." Warning bells chimed in Emma's head. "What do you mean?" "He's different since he met you. More relaxed somehow. Margaret mentioned he's been humming in the office elevators." Catherine laughed, a sound like silver bells. "Nathaniel hasn't hummed since he was 18. Great. Now she had to make him seem happy too. "He makes me happy as well," Emma said, surprised to find it wasn't entirely false. Despite the bizarre circumstances, Something about Nathaniel's intensity and unexpected moments of vulnerability did affect her. Wonderful. He deserves genuine happiness. Catherine leaned forward conspiratorially. Now tell me absolutely everything. How did he propose? Emma's mind went completely blank. They hadn't rehearsed this crucial detail. It was intimate, she said carefully. We were having dinner at his apartment and he just asked. That doesn't sound like my son at all. Nathaniel plans everything down to the smallest detail. Think fast, Emma. Well, it was spontaneous for him too. He told me later he hadn't intended to propose that night, but it felt absolutely right in the moment. Catherine's smile broadened with genuine delight. Now that sounds much more authentic. Love makes us all delightfully unpredictable, doesn't it? Before Emma could respond, masculine voices echoed from the front entrance hall. Catherine's face lit up like Christmas morning. Finally. And he brought James with him. You'll adore James. He's practically family. They entered the main salon just as Nathaniel appeared with a distinguished Asian man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. Nathaniel's eyes found Emma immediately, and she felt that now familiar jolt of electricity course through her system. Apologies for our tardiness, Nathaniel said, crossing to kiss his mother's cheek before moving to Emma. The conference call with Tokyo ran considerably longer than anticipated. He slipped his arm around Emma's waist with practiced ease, but she noticed the slight tension in his broad shoulders. Emma, this is James Chen, my business partner and one of my oldest friends, Nathaniel said smoothly. James, my fiancée, Emma Richardson. James stepped forward with a genuinely warm smile, taking both of Emma's hands in his weathered ones. At last, Nathaniel has been keeping you far too much of a secret. The pleasure is entirely mine, Mr. Chen. Nathaniel speaks of you constantly. James, please, and I sincerely hope he says only positive things. His dark eyes twinkled with mischief. Mostly, Emma replied with a grin, earning a hearty laugh from the older man. I like her immediately, James announced to Nathaniel. She has genuine spirit. She certainly does, Nathaniel murmured, his thumb tracing a small, unconscious circle on her hip that made her hyper-aware of every point of contact between them. Catherine clapped her hands together with obvious delight. Perfect. Now shall we have cocktails before dinner? I want to hear every detail about your future plans. As they settled in the elegantly appointed living room, Emma found herself relaxing despite the high-stakes circumstances. James regaled them with entertaining stories from his recent business travels, and Catherine proved to be a gifted hostess, keeping conversation flowing effortlessly. So, Emma, James said during a comfortable lull, Nathaniel tells me you're an educator. What drew you to teaching? This was safe territory. I grew up in a family that couldn't afford private education, but I was fortunate enough to have teachers who recognized potential in me. They literally changed the entire trajectory of my life, and I wanted to do the same for other kids. That's truly admirable, Catherine said softly. Not enough people understand how vital good teachers are to society. Exactly what I told Nathaniel when we first met, Emma continued, warming to her favorite subject. Too many people think teaching is easy, but they don't see the countless hours we spend creating lesson plans, grading papers, worrying about our students. When you genuinely care about children, you carry their struggles home with you every single night. She realized the room had grown quiet. Everyone was watching her with expressions she couldn't quite decipher. I'm sorry, she said, feeling heat creep up her neck. I get a bit passionate about education reform. Never apologize for passion, Nathaniel said quietly, his voice carrying an intensity that made something flutter in her chest. It's one of the things I find most attractive about you. The way he said it, the genuine warmth in his voice, made her almost believe he meant it. A woman with authentic passion is a rare treasure, James agreed solemnly. My late wife was the same way about her medical research. She could discuss cellular biology for hours, and I could listen indefinitely just to watch her eyes light up with enthusiasm. How long were you married? Emma asked gently. 38 years, James replied. She passed 3 years ago, but I still feel her presence with me every day. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you, dear. But being with you two tonight, it reminds me of those early days with Linda. That spark, that connection that transcends mere words. He raised his crystal wine glass, to young love, and to the wisdom to recognize it when it finds you. As they clinked glasses, Emma caught Nathaniel's gaze over the rim of her wine. Something passed between them, an understanding, a question, or maybe just acknowledgement of how convincingly authentic they'd become. Dinner was served on the terrace overlooking the meticulously manicured gardens. The conversation flowed from business to travel to cherished family stories. Emma found herself genuinely enjoying the evening, especially when Catherine shared embarrassing childhood anecdotes about Nathaniel. He was so serious, even as a small boy, Catherine said, passing around exquisite creme brulee. Always reading financial reports, always planning his next move, but David could make him laugh until his sides ached. What was David like? Emma asked gently. Nathaniel's fork paused halfway to his mouth. David was pure sunshine where Nathaniel tends towards storm clouds, Catherine said fondly. Not in a negative way. They balanced each other perfectly. David dreamed impossibly big but rarely followed through. Nathaniel plans meticulously, but sometimes forgets to actually dream. Perhaps that's changing, James suggested meaningfully, looking at Emma. I certainly hope so, Catherine said softly. Nathaniel deserves to be genuinely happy. After dinner, Catherine insisted on showing James her prized orchid collection, leaving Nathaniel and Emma alone on the terrace. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the gentle sound of the fountain in the garden below. You're remarkably natural at this, Nathaniel said finally, loosening his silk tie. Your family is wonderful. This is harder than I expected. Harder how? I genuinely like them. I like your mother. I like James. It makes the deception feel infinitely worse. Emma twisted the engagement ring around her finger. Your mother truly loves you. I know. She's still grieving your brother. We all are. Nathaniel's voice was carefully neutral, but Emma heard the deep pain underneath. Is that why you work constantly? To honor his memory? Nathaniel was quiet for so long that Emma wondered if he'd heard her question. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. David was supposed to take over the company eventually. He had the natural personality for it, the charm, the instinctive leadership abilities. I was going to handle the financial aspects, stay behind the scenes. Nathaniel's hands gripped the stone terrace railing. After he died, I had to transform into someone I wasn't naturally suited to be. You seem perfectly suited for leadership to me. I learned through necessity. But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if David had lived, if I'd been free to choose my own path. What path would you have chosen? He turned to look at her then, and in the soft moonlight his expression was unguarded in a way she'd never witnessed before. I wanted to teach, he said simply. The admission hung between them like a bridge, fragile, unexpected, and somehow inevitable. Nathaniel, she began, but he stepped closer, close enough that she could detect his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. Emma. Her name was a whisper on his lips. What are we doing? She knew he wasn't talking about the fake engagement anymore. The air between them crackled with tension that had nothing to do with their business arrangement, and everything to do with the way he was looking at her. Like she was the answer to a question he'd been afraid to ask. I don't know, she whispered back. He reached up, his fingers barely grazing her cheek. This wasn't supposed to happen. What wasn't? This. His thumb traced her lower lip, making her breath catch. You weren't supposed to be real. Before she could ask what he meant, the terrace doors opened and Catherine appeared with James. Oh! Catherine's face broke into a delighted smile. Don't mind us. We're just getting some fresh air. Nathaniel stepped back smoothly, but not before Emma caught the flash of something like regret in his storm-gray eyes. Actually, James said, checking his vintage watch, I should return to the hotel. Early flight tomorrow. Of course, Nathaniel said, his professional mask sliding back into place. I'll have the driver take you. As they said their goodbyes, James pulled Emma aside. Take care of him, he said quietly. Nathaniel carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. He needs someone who can remind him to set it down occasionally. I'll try, Emma promised, meaning it more than she should have. The ride back to her Brooklyn apartment was quiet. Nathaniel sat beside her in the back of the luxury sedan, close enough to touch but somehow miles away. When they reached her modest building, he walked her to the door like a proper gentleman. Thank you, he said formally. Tonight exceeded my expectations. Your family is wonderful. They adore you. My mother is probably already planning the wedding. Something in his tone made her look up sharply. Nathaniel, is everything all right? He stared at her for a long moment as if trying to solve a complex puzzle. I'm not certain, he said finally. I'm not certain about anything anymore. He leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her cheek. Appropriate for anyone watching, but lingering just a moment too long to be purely for show. Good night, Emma. As she watched his car disappear into the night, Emma touched her cheek where his lips had been. The fake engagement ring caught the streetlight, sending rainbow patterns across her building's modest brick facade. She was in serious trouble. Deep, dangerous, heart-stopping trouble. Because somewhere between the charity gala lie and tonight's family dinner, she'd started falling for a man who was paying her to pretend to love him. And the terrifying part? She was beginning to suspect he might be falling too. The scandal erupted on a Thursday morning like a perfectly orchestrated tsunami. Emma was grading her third-grade students' math tests in her favorite Brooklyn coffee shop when her phone erupted with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, social media alerts, and news notifications flooded her screen in an endless, overwhelming stream. Her hands trembled as she opened the first breaking news alert. Rags to riches. Tech billionaire Nathaniel Blake's shocking engagement to public school teacher. The article was accompanied by photos, high-resolution shots of her walking into Blake Industries, leaving the Greenwich estate, and most mortifyingly, a grainy paparazzi photo of her modest Brooklyn apartment building, with the cruel caption, "From teacher's salary to trust fund, the ultimate fairy tale or calculated gold digging." Her blood turned to ice as she scrolled through the brutal comments. Section. Obviously a gold digger. Look at that tiny apartment. Poor girl probably thought she won the lottery. How long before he realizes his mistake? She's actually pretty, but definitely not in his league. This won't last 6 months. Rich guys always come to their senses. Oh no, oh no, oh no, she whispered frantically, gathering her papers with shaking hands. Other coffee shop patrons were starting to stare, some not so subtly holding up phones to snap photos. A few were whispering and pointing in her direction. Her phone rang, Nathaniel's name flashing urgently on the screen. I've seen everything. His voice was tight with controlled fury when she answered. Where are you right now? Brooklyn Heights Cafe. People are starting to recognize me and stay exactly where you are. I'm sending security immediately. Security? Nathaniel, this is absolutely insane. I can't live like this. My students, my colleagues, we'll figure it out together. Just don't speak to any reporters, don't respond to any social media, and whatever you do, don't leave until my team arrives. 2 imposing men in dark suits materialized at her table before she could even respond properly. Miss Richardson, Mr. Blake sent us to escort you safely. The ride to Blake Industries felt surreal, like living inside someone else's nightmare. Photographers swarmed the luxury sedan as they pulled up to the building, camera flashes creating a strobe light effect through the tinted windows. The security team flanked her protectively as they moved through the marble lobby to the private elevator, but she could still hear the shouted questions. Emma, how long have you been dating Nathaniel? Is it true you met at a literacy event? What do you say to critics calling you a gold digger? Are you pregnant? Is that why he proposed so? Quickly, Nathaniel was pacing his office like a caged predator when she arrived. His usually immaculate hair was disheveled, his Italian silk tie loosened, and there was a dangerous glint in his storm-gray eyes that she'd never seen before. "This is a complete disaster," he said without preamble, gesturing toward multiple computer screens displaying news articles. "My PR team has been fielding calls since 5 a.m. The board is demanding an emergency meeting, and my mother has received 18 calls this morning from concerned family friends." "So we end it," Emma said quietly, slumping into the leather chair across from his desk. "We break up publicly. Say it was all a misunderstanding, that we moved too fast." "Absolutely not." The words came out so forcefully that she looked up in surprise. That would be the worst possible move right now. "Why? This is exactly what we were afraid would happen." Nathaniel stopped pacing and turned to face her fully. "Because James Chen is flying back from San Francisco this afternoon specifically to discuss the acquisition details. If we break up now, right after he witnessed our happy engagement dinner, he'll know something was wrong. The entire deal will collapse." Emma felt trapped, like the walls were closing in around her. "But the media attention will die down in a few weeks if we handle it correctly." He moved to sit on the edge of his desk, closer to her. "My head of communications, David Rodriguez, is crafting our response strategy as we speak." "What kind of strategy?" "We lean into it. Give them exactly what they want, the fairy tale romance." Nathaniel's voice took on that calculating tone she was beginning to recognize. "An exclusive interview with Manhattan Weekly, some carefully staged photo opportunities, maybe a charity event together. You want us to do more public appearances? Are you completely out of your mind?" "Emma, listen to me." He knelt down beside her chair, taking her hands in his. The familiar electric shock of his touch made her breath catch. "I know this feels overwhelming, but we can control the narrative if we're smart about it." "And what about my job, my students?" Her voice cracked slightly. "I had 3 reporters waiting outside my school this morning. The principal had to escort me out through the back entrance." Something shifted in Nathaniel's expression, becoming softer and more concerned. "I'm sorry, I didn't consider how this would affect your work life." "Of course you didn't. You live in a world where this kind of attention is normal." She pulled her hands free and stood abruptly, walking to the windows. "I teach 8-year-olds math and reading. I don't know how to handle paparazzi and gossip columns." "Then I'll teach you." He stood and moved behind her, his presence warm and reassuring. "My family has been dealing with media attention for 4 generations. I know how to navigate these waters." Emma caught their reflection in the glass, him tall and commanding in his expensive suit, her looking small and overwhelmed in her simple dress. They looked like they belonged to completely different species. "Look at us," she said quietly. "Really look. Everyone's right. I don't belong in your world. Emma." "I saw the comments, Nathaniel. Thousands of them. They're calling me a gold digger, a social climber, a charity case you're probably just sleeping with." Her voice wavered. "Maybe they're right. They're not." His hand settled on her shoulders, warm and steady. "They don't know you. They don't know how brilliant you are, how passionately you care about your students, how you light up when you talk about education reform." She turned around to face him, surprised by the intensity in his voice. "Why does it matter what they think anyway? This is all fake, remember?" Something flickered across his face, too quick to interpret. "Right, of course." A sharp knock interrupted the moment. Margaret entered carrying an enormous bouquet of white roses and a concerned expression. "The flowers are from your mother," she announced. She wanted Emma to know she's thinking of her during this difficult time. "Also, David Rodriguez is here with the PR strategy, and you have the emergency board meeting in 20 minutes. "Send David in," Nathaniel said, his professional mask sliding back into place. David Rodriguez was a sharp-dressed man in his 40s, with the kind of confidence that came from handling celebrity crises for a living. He spread several tablets and documents across Nathaniel's conference table with military precision. "The situation is manageable," he began without preamble. "But we need to act quickly and decisively. The story has already been picked up by Entertainment Tonight, Page 6, and 3 major news networks. Emma felt dizzy. Entertainment Tonight? The engagement of one of America's most eligible bachelors is major news, David explained matter-of-factly. Especially when it's to someone completely outside the usual social circles. Lucky me, Emma muttered. Actually, yes. David smiled for the first time. The outsider angle is working in our favor. The public loves a Cinderella story, and the photos from last night's dinner show a genuinely happy couple. Nathaniel frowned. What photos from dinner? David pulled up images on his tablet, shots of them on the terrace, laughing during dinner, the moment when Nathaniel had almost kissed her. They looked completely natural together, completely in love. How did photographers get these? Emma asked, her stomach sinking. Long-range lenses from the property next door, David said. But here's the beautiful part. You both look absolutely authentic. No staged poses, no fake smiles. These photos are worth their weight in gold for our narrative. Our narrative, Emma repeated numbly. The brilliant teacher who captured the heart of the emotionally unavailable billionaire, David continued enthusiastically. The woman who made him remember there's more to life than business deals and board meetings. Emma glanced at Nathaniel, who was studying the photos with an unreadable expression. So, what's the plan? Nathaniel asked. First, we arrange an exclusive interview with Manhattan Weekly. Their society editor, Patricia Winters, is very friendly to your family. We control the questions, the setting, everything. David was in full PR mode now. Second, we plan a public appearance at the Children's Literacy Foundation Gala next weekend. Emma's background makes it perfect. She's not just arm candy, she's genuinely involved in education. I've never been to a charity gala, Emma protested. Even better, your authenticity will be refreshing. David made notes on his tablet. We'll also arrange some casual paparazzi shots. Coffee dates, walking through Central Park, maybe some shopping on Fifth Avenue. Shopping on Fifth Avenue? Emma's voice rose an octave. Do you know what teachers make annually? Which brings us to wardrobe, David continued smoothly. We'll arrange for a stylist to help you build an appropriate closet. Nothing too dramatic. We want elegant, but accessible. Emma felt like she was drowning in details. This is too much. I can't. Yes, you can. Nathaniel's voice was firm, but not unkind. Emma, I know this feels overwhelming, but we're in this together. I won't let anything happen to you. The sincerity in his voice made her look up sharply. For a moment, she forgot that David was in the room, forgot that this was all supposed to be pretend. Mr. Blake, Margaret's voice came through the intercom. The board is ready for you. Give me 5 minutes, Nathaniel replied, then turned to David. Set up the Manhattan Weekly interview for Saturday morning. And David, make sure Emma has full approval over all questions. After David left, Nathaniel and Emma were alone again. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. I have to ask you something, Emma said finally, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. Are you having second thoughts about our arrangement? She twisted the engagement ring around her finger. Because if you want to end this before it gets more complicated... No, the answer came quickly, almost fiercely. Emma, I know this is harder than either of us anticipated, but I don't want to stop. Even with all the media attention, the board breathing down your neck, especially because of that. He stepped closer, his eyes intense. Do you want to stop? She studied his face, looking for any sign that he was just saying what he thought she wanted to hear. But there was something in his expression, vulnerability, maybe even hope, that made her heart race. No, she whispered. I don't want to stop either. Then we see this through, together. Mr. Blake? Margaret's voice was more insistent now. The board really is waiting. I have to go, Nathaniel said reluctantly. But Emma, everything is going to be fine, I promise. He leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead, a gesture so tender and unexpected that it made her eyes close involuntarily. Margaret will arrange a car to take you home safely. There's a security detail assigned to your building now. Security detail. Just until the initial media frenzy dies down. He was already moving toward the door, but he paused. And Emma? Don't read any more of those articles. They don't know what they're talking about. After he left, Emma sat alone in his office, surrounded by the trappings of wealth and power that still felt foreign to her. She picked up one of the tablets David had left behind and scrolled through more news coverage. But mixed in with the critical comments and speculation, she found something else. Supporters, people defending their relationship, saying it was refreshing to see a billionaire with someone real, praising Nathaniel for choosing substance over status. Good for him. She seems genuine and accomplished. Finally, a rich guy who didn't just marry another rich girl. They look really happy together. Hope it works out. Smart men appreciate smart women. She's obviously brilliant. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Chloe. Girl, I'm watching you on the news right now. You look amazing. Call me when you can. I'm dying for details. Another text, this one from her principal. Emma, take tomorrow off. The media circus will die down soon. Your job is secure. The school board is actually thrilled about the positive attention for public education. And then, unexpectedly, a text from an unknown number. Miss Richardson, this is Michael from your Tuesday-Thursday class. My mom showed me your picture on the news. You look like a real princess. We're all proud of you. Your students. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Her students. Her wonderful, innocent students who saw nothing but magic in their teacher's fairy tale moment. Maybe she could do this. Maybe she was stronger than she thought. Her phone rang again, Nathaniel's number. How are you holding up? He asked without preamble. Better. Your board meeting finished already? They approved the PR strategy, unanimously. There was something like relief in his voice. Emma, there's something else. James Chen wants to have dinner with us tomorrow night. He's extending his stay specifically to spend more time with my future wife. More performance anxiety. Great. You were perfect last night. Just be yourself again. Myself in designer clothes with professional makeup, you mean? Yourself, he repeated firmly. That's all anyone could want. After they hung up, Emma looked around Nathaniel's office one more time. The view from 52 floors up was breathtaking. The entire city spread out like a glittering map of possibilities. For the first time since this crazy adventure began, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like if this were real. If Nathaniel Blake had actually fallen in love with a Brooklyn public school teacher. If she actually belonged in his world. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. As Margaret escorted her to the private elevator, Emma caught her reflection in the polished steel doors. The woman looking back at her wore a sapphire engagement ring worth more than a car, but her eyes still held the determined spark of someone who'd fought for every opportunity she'd ever received. Maybe she did belong here after all. Maybe fairy tales didn't always end with broken hearts. Maybe, just maybe, some of them ended with two people discovering they'd found exactly what they never knew they were looking for. The Manhattan Weekly photo shoot was scheduled for 10 a.m. on Saturday, but Emma had been awake since 4 in the morning, staring at her bedroom ceiling and rehearsing answers to potential questions. By the time Nathaniel's car arrived at 7:30 to take her to the magazine's prestigious Fifth Avenue headquarters, she'd changed outfits 3 times and consumed enough coffee to power a small city. You look beautiful, Nathaniel said as she slid into the back seat beside him. He was wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, but his eyes held the same nervous energy she felt. I look terrified, Emma corrected, smoothing the cream-colored silk dress the stylist had selected. Patricia Winters has been interviewing Manhattan's elite for 20 years. She's going to see right through us. Not if we stick to our story. Nathaniel's hand found hers, his thumb tracing reassuring circles across her knuckles. Remember, we met at the literacy fundraiser, bonded over education reform, took things slowly because we're both careful people, and fell madly in love, Emma added with just a hint of sarcasm. And fell madly in love, he repeated. but something in his voice made her look at him sharply. The intensity in his storm-gray eyes sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. The Manhattan Weekly offices occupied 3 floors of a gleaming glass tower, decorated with blown-up covers featuring presidents, movie stars, and royalty. Patricia Winters met them in the reception area, a woman in her 50s with platinum hair, sharp cheekbones, and the kind of penetrating gaze that suggested she could spot a lie from 3 blocks away. "Nathaniel, darling." Patricia air-kissed his cheeks with practiced efficiency. "And this must be the famous Emma. You're even lovelier than your photos suggested." "Thank you, Ms. Winters. It's an honor to meet you." "Patricia, please. Now, shall we get started? I have a photographer standing by for some couples shots, and then we'll sit down for our chat." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of camera flashes, outfit changes, and increasingly intimate poses. The photographer, a hyperactive man named Marco, directed them through dozens of scenarios. Emma laughing at something Nathaniel whispered in her ear, Nathaniel's hands on her waist as they gazed out a window overlooking Central Park, both of them reading together on an elegant sofa. "Perfect. Now, Nathaniel, if you could just look at Emma like she's the only woman in the world," Marco called out during their final setup. Emma felt Nathaniel's gaze settle on her face with such intensity that she forgot they were pretending. For a moment, surrounded by camera flashes and stage lights, it felt completely real. "Beautiful. That's exactly what we needed," Marco announced with satisfaction. The interview portion took place in Patricia's corner office, a shrine to decades of journalistic scoops. Emma perched on the edge of an antique chair while Nathaniel sat relaxed beside her, one hand casually resting on her knee. "So," Patricia began, her digital recorder already running, "let's start with the obvious question. Nathaniel, you've been Manhattan's most eligible bachelor for nearly a decade. What made Emma special enough to finally capture your heart?" Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, and Emma felt her pulse quicken. They'd rehearsed this answer, but his expression suggested he was about to go off script. "Emma makes me remember who I am beneath all the business suits and board meetings," he said finally, his voice carrying an unexpected note of vulnerability. "She's passionate about things that matter, fearless when she believes in something, and completely unimpressed by my bank account." "And, Emma, what attracted you to Nathaniel?" This was her cue to mention his philanthropy, his intelligence, his dedication to his family's legacy. Instead, she found herself speaking from the heart. "He listens," she said simply. "Really listens. Not just to my words, but to what I'm not saying. He remembers details about my students, asks thoughtful questions about my work, and never makes me feel like my world is less important than his." Patricia's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's quite romantic. Now, there's been some speculation about the speed of your engagement. You've only been dating 6 months. Isn't that rather quick for such successful, independent people?" Emma felt Nathaniel tense beside her. This was dangerous territory. "When you know, you know," Emma said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. "We're both practical people who don't believe in wasting time once we've found something real. And, Emma, how are you handling the media attention? It must be overwhelming for someone who's lived a relatively private life." "It's definitely an adjustment," Emma admitted, "but the positive response has been incredible. I've received hundreds of messages from teachers and students saying they're proud to see public education represented. That means more to me than any criticism. Speaking of which, there have been some rather harsh comments about your background difference. How do you respond to suggestions that this is a gold digger situation?" Emma felt her cheeks flush, but before she could respond, Nathaniel's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Anyone who thinks Emma is with me for money clearly hasn't spent 5 minutes in her presence," he said, his tone carrying a warning edge. "She's brilliant, accomplished, and passionate about making the world better. Those are the qualities that matter in a life partner." Patricia smiled, clearly pleased with his protective response. "Nathaniel, your family is known for their privacy. How do they feel about Emma?" "My mother adores her," Nathaniel said, relaxing again. Emma fits into our family like she was always meant to be there. My business partner James says she reminds him of his late wife, intelligent, caring, and completely authentic. And what about wedding plans? Any details you can share? Emma's mind went blank. They hadn't discussed this at all. We're thinking spring, Nathaniel said smoothly. Something intimate, focused on family rather than spectacle. Emma isn't interested in a society circus. Very refreshing. One final question. What do you hope people take away from your story? Emma looked at Nathaniel, then back at Patricia. That love doesn't care about tax brackets or zip codes. That two people from different worlds can find common ground in shared values and genuine connection. After the interview concluded and they'd said their goodbyes, Emma and Nathaniel found themselves alone in the elevator descending to street level. That went well, Nathaniel said, but his voice sounded strange. Did it? I felt like I was improvising half my answers. Your answers were perfect. Too perfect. Something in his tone made Emma study his reflection in the polished elevator doors. What do you mean? Nothing. Forget I said anything. The elevator opened onto the lobby, where David Rodriguez was waiting with an enormous grin. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, he exclaimed, practically bouncing on his toes. Patricia texted me already. She's calling it the romance interview of the decade. This is going to be front-page material. Great, Emma said weakly. Now we need to talk about tonight's dinner with James Chen. He specifically requested somewhere more casual. Apparently, he wants to see you two in a natural environment. Define casual, Nathaniel said. I've made reservations at that little Italian place in Little Italy you mentioned loving, Emma. Gino's. James wants authentic New York, not another five-star scene. Emma's stomach dropped. Gino's is where I take my students for field trips. It's tiny, crowded, loud. Perfect, David beamed. Completely normal, completely you. James will love it. As they climbed back into Nathaniel's car, Emma felt the weight of the day settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Are you okay? Nathaniel asked, noting her silence. I'm tired of performing, she said quietly. Every word, every gesture, every expression has to be calculated. It's exhausting. I know. But it's working. The public is buying our story. Because we're good liars? Because we're good together, he corrected, something unreadable in his voice. That evening, Gino's restaurant was packed with its usual eclectic mix of tourists, families, and local residents. The walls were covered with faded photographs of Italian villages, and the air was thick with the aroma of garlic and fresh basil. It was Emma's favorite place in the city, unpretentious, warm, and completely authentic. James Chen looked slightly overwhelmed by the chaos when they arrived, but his expression brightened when Gino himself, a 70-year-old man with flour-dusted hands and a thick Sicilian accent, greeted Emma like a beloved family member. Emma, my favorite teacher, Gino boomed, enveloping her in a bear hug that smelled like oregano and happiness. And you must be the lucky man who captured our Emma's heart. Nathaniel Blake, Nathaniel said, extending his hand with genuine warmth. Emma's told me wonderful things about this place. Sit, sit. I make you the special tonight. My grandmother's recipe. Nobody else gets this. As Gino bustled away, James looked around the restaurant with obvious delight. This is perfect. Absolutely perfect. Emma, this place feels like home. It is home in a way, Emma said, relaxing for the first time all day. I bring my students here every spring for our cultural exploration unit. Gino teaches them how to make pasta and tells stories about growing up in Sicily. You bring your students here? James looked impressed. Most teachers wouldn't go to such lengths. Most teachers don't get to see their kids' faces light up when they realize learning can happen anywhere, Emma replied. Some of my students have never been outside their neighborhood. A trip to Little Italy might as well be a journey to another planet. Nathaniel was watching her with that intense expression again, the one that made her forget they were acting. Tell James about the student who decided to become a chef, he said softly. Emma blinked in surprise. She'd mentioned Marcus in passing weeks ago, never expecting Nathaniel to remember. Marcus Williams, she said, warming to the story. 8 years old, lived with his grandmother, never shown much interest in anything academic. But when Gino let him help in the kitchen, something clicked. He started researching Italian cuisine, writing stories about food, even improved his math skills calculating recipe measurements. "Where is he now?" James asked. "Still in my class, but thriving. His grandmother says he cooks dinner for them twice a week now. He's talking about culinary school when he grows up." "That's the kind of impact education should have," James said thoughtfully. "Nathaniel, this is exactly what I was talking about. Emma understands that real success isn't measured in dollars." Dinner arrived in stages, antipasto that covered their entire table, homemade pasta with sauce that tasted like liquid sunshine, and wine that Gino insisted was, from my cousin's vineyard, very special. As the evening progressed, Emma found herself genuinely enjoying the conversation. James was a gifted storyteller, sharing tales from his early days building his company, his marriage to his beloved Linda, and his philosophy about balancing profit with purpose. "You know," James said as they shared a dessert of homemade tiramisu, "watching you two together reminds me why I'm so excited about our acquisition. You both understand that the most valuable things in life can't be quantified on a spreadsheet." "What do you mean?" Emma asked. "Love, loyalty, legacy, these are the foundations of any lasting success." James raised his wine glass. "To partnerships built on more than just profit margins." As they clinked glasses, Emma caught Nathaniel's eye across the table. Something passed between them, a moment of connection that felt dangerously real. After James left for his hotel, Nathaniel and Emma walked slowly through the quieter streets of Little Italy. The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn and the distant sound of late-night city traffic. "James really likes you," Nathaniel said, breaking the comfortable silence. "He's wonderful. You're lucky to have him as a partner." "I know." Nathaniel stopped walking suddenly. "Emma, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Back at the restaurant when you were talking about your students, you looked so happy. Genuinely happy. Do you ever regret agreeing to this arrangement?" The question caught her off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "Because your real life seems pretty amazing exactly as it is. You love your work, your students adore you, you have this whole community that embraces you." He gestured back toward Gino's. "Maybe you don't need my world at all." Emma studied his face in the soft glow of the streetlights. "Are you having second thoughts?" "No," he said quickly. "No, I want to make sure you're not giving up something important for something temporary." "Nathaniel." She stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of green in his gray eyes. "What we're doing, this arrangement, it's not taking away from my real life. If anything, it's adding to it." "How?" "The platform, for one thing. Do you know how many people have reached out to me about education reform since our engagement was announced? How many potential donors want to hear about charter school initiatives?" She smiled. "But beyond that?" "What?" "You're adding to it too. To my life." The admission slipped out before she could stop it. "These past few weeks getting to know you, the real you, not the business magazine version. It's been..." "What?" he asked again, his voice barely a whisper. "Wonderful," she finished honestly. They stood there in the middle of the sidewalk, looking at each other like they were seeing something new and unexpected. The space between them seemed to vibrate with possibility. "Emma," Nathaniel said, his voice rough with something she couldn't identify. "Yes?" "I think we're in trouble." "What kind of trouble?" Instead of answering, he reached up and touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. "The kind where we forget this is supposed to be fake." Her breath caught. "Nathaniel, I know this complicates everything." His forehead touched hers. "But I can't pretend anymore that what I feel for you is just part of our arrangement." "What do you feel?" she whispered. "Everything," he said simply. Everything I wasn't supposed to feel. Before she could respond, his lips touched hers, soft, tentative, asking a question she answered by kissing him back. It was nothing like the performative gestures they'd shared for cameras. This was real, desperate, and completely overwhelming. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "This changes things," Emma said, her voice shaky. "Yes, it does. We agreed this was just business. I know. 6 months and then back to our separate lives. I know that too. So what do we do now?" Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, his hands still framing her face. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've never been in this situation before." "What situation?" "Falling for someone I'm paying to pretend to love me." The honesty in his voice made her heart race. "You're falling for me?" "Have been since the night we met, if I'm being completely honest." His smile was rueful. "You terrify me, Emma Richardson." "Why?" "Because you make me want things I never thought I could have. Things that don't fit into neat business plans or quarterly projections." "Like what?" "Like a real partnership. Like someone who challenges me to be better. Like a life that means something beyond profit margins and board meetings." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "Nathaniel, I know this is complicated. I know our arrangement makes everything messier. But I can't pretend anymore that you're just playing a role." "I'm not," she whispered. "Pretending, I mean. What I feel for you, it's real too." They stood there in the soft glow of the streetlights, two people who'd entered into a business arrangement and found something infinitely more valuable. "So what happens now?" Emma asked. "Now we figure out how to turn a fake engagement into something real," Nathaniel said, pulling her closer. "If you want to, that is." "I want to," she said without hesitation. "But Nathaniel?" "Yes?" "We're going to have to tell James the truth eventually, and your mother, and probably everyone else." "I know. And the media is going to have a field day if they find out we started as fake." "I know that too. And we still come from completely different worlds with completely different expectations." "Emma," Nathaniel said, silencing her with another soft kiss. "We'll figure it out, together." As they walked back to his car, hand in hand, really hand in hand, not for show, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced since childhood, the absolute certainty that magic was possible. She just hoped they were strong enough to handle whatever came next, because falling in love was the easy part. Staying in love while the whole world watched, that was going to be the real challenge. 3 weeks after their first real kiss, Emma Richardson was living a double life that would have made professional spies envious. By day, she maintained her teaching schedule at PS 234 in Brooklyn, grading papers and managing parent-teacher conferences with the same dedication she'd always shown. By evening, she transformed into the sophisticated fiancée of one of Manhattan's most powerful men, attending charity galas, business dinners, and social events that regularly made the society pages. The Manhattan Weekly cover story had been everything David Rodriguez promised, and more. The headline, "Love Conquers All," how a Brooklyn teacher captured Manhattan's most eligible heart, sat above a stunning photo of Emma and Nathaniel gazing at each other with expressions of such genuine affection that Emma sometimes forgot they'd been acting when it was taken. The public response had been overwhelmingly positive. Emma's school had received over $50,000 in unsolicited donations. 3 major publishers had reached out about potential book deals. The Department of Education wanted her to speak at their annual conference. Her principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, had started referring to her as our celebrity teacher, with obvious pride. But tonight was different. Tonight, everything they'd built together was about to be tested in the most spectacular way possible. The Children's Literacy Foundation Gala was Manhattan's most prestigious educational charity event, held annually at the Plaza Hotel's Grand Ballroom. 500 of New York's wealthiest and most influential citizens would be in attendance, including several board members from Blake Industries, numerous journalists, and most terrifyingly, Nathaniel's entire extended family. Emma stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the stunning midnight blue gown that had been delivered that afternoon. The dress was a masterpiece of understated elegance, flowing silk that skimmed her curves perfectly, with delicate beading that caught the light like captured stars. The matching shoes were the most beautiful and expensive things she'd ever worn, but her hands were shaking as she tried to fasten the sapphire necklace Nathaniel had given her to complement her engagement ring. "Let me help with that," Chloe said, appearing behind her in the mirror. Emma's best friend had been serving as her unofficial stylist and emotional support system for the past month, and tonight she looked almost as nervous as Emma felt. "I can't do this," Emma said suddenly, dropping her hands. "I can't go to this gala and pretend everything is perfect when my whole life feels like it's built on quicksand." "What are you talking about? You and Nathaniel are the hottest couple in New York. The magazine article made you sound like the greatest love story since Romeo and Juliet." "That's just it, Chloe. None of this started real. We're living this elaborate lie, and every day it gets more complicated." Emma sank onto her bed, careful not to wrinkle the dress. "What if someone finds out the truth? What if I say something wrong tonight? What if—" "Emma Elizabeth Richardson." Chloe sat beside her, taking her hands. "Listen to me. I've watched you with Nathaniel. I've seen how he looks at you, how you light up when he calls, how you two can't seem to keep your hands off each other when you think no one's watching. But it started as fake. So what? Some of the best relationships start unexpectedly. The point is where you are now, not how you got there." Chloe squeezed her hands. "Do you love him?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Emma had been avoiding thinking about it directly, but surrounded by the quiet of her Brooklyn apartment, with her best friend's knowing eyes watching her, there was nowhere left to hide. "Yes," she whispered. "I love him so much it terrifies me." "And does he love you?" Emma thought about the way Nathaniel had been looking at her lately, with an intensity that went far beyond their original arrangement. The way he'd started calling her every morning just to hear her voice. How he'd shown up at her school yesterday with coffee and pastries for her entire grade-level team, just because she'd mentioned they were working late on curriculum planning. "I think so. Maybe. I hope so." "Then what are you worried about?" "Everything." Emma stood up, pacing to her window that overlooked the Brooklyn Bridge. "Chloe, his world is so different from mine. Tonight there will be people who've known his family for generations, who remember when his great-grandfather was building the company. I'm going to be surrounded by old money, old traditions, old expectations that I'll never truly understand. So, you're brilliant, accomplished, and kind. Those are the only qualifications that matter for loving someone. Tell that to the society pages. Tell that to his business partners who are investing billions based partly on their confidence in his personal stability." Emma's voice rose with anxiety. "What happens when they realize their golden boy fell for someone who was pretending to be his fiancé for money?" "Emma," Chloe's voice was firm, "you're not pretending anymore. Whatever this started as, it's real now. And anyone who can't see how perfect you are for Nathaniel Blake is an idiot who doesn't deserve your concern." A soft knock at the apartment door interrupted their conversation. Emma checked her watch. Nathaniel was exactly on time, as always. When she opened the door, her breath caught. He looked devastatingly handsome in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, but it was the expression on his face when he saw her that made her heart race. "You're stunning," he said softly, his storm gray eyes traveling from her face to her toes and back again with obvious appreciation. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she managed, her earlier anxiety temporarily forgotten in the face of his admiring gaze. "These are for you." He handed her a small wrapped box. "I know you already have the necklace, but I thought you might like these." Inside were the most delicate diamond earrings she'd ever seen, vintage Art Deco pieces that looked like they belonged in a museum. "Nathaniel, these are too much." "They were my great-grandmother's. I had them cleaned and reset." His fingers brushed her neck as he helped her put them on. "She would have wanted you to wear them tonight." The gesture was so thoughtful, so personal, that Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you." Ready to face the lion's den? He asked, offering his arm. As ready as I'll ever be. The ride to the Plaza Hotel was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Nathaniel's hand found hers in the back seat of the luxury sedan, his thumb tracing familiar circles across her knuckles. "Emma," he said as they neared the hotel, "there's something I need to tell you before we go in." Her stomach dropped. "What is it?" "My cousin Bradley is going to be there tonight. He's complicated." "Complicated how?" "He's my father's nephew. Grew up expecting to inherit a significant portion of the company before I proved myself as CEO. He's never quite forgiven me for that." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "He has a talent for stirring up trouble, especially when he's been drinking." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where he asks pointed questions designed to make people uncomfortable. Just be prepared, and don't let anything he says get to you." Before Emma could ask for more details, their car pulled up to the plaza's red carpet entrance. Camera flashes immediately began exploding through the tinted windows. "Show time," Nathaniel murmured, squeezing her hand one last time. The next few minutes passed in a blur of photographer calls, reporter questions, and the overwhelming sensory assault of New York's social elite arriving in force. Emma smiled and waved, answered questions about her dress and her excitement for the evening, and tried to ignore the way some people stared at her like she was a fascinating exhibit in a zoo. The plaza's grand ballroom had been transformed into an elegant winter wonderland, with crystal chandeliers casting warm light over tables draped in ivory silk and centerpieces of white roses and baby's breath. The guest list read like a who's who of Manhattan society: tech moguls, real estate dynasties, entertainment industry royalty, and politicians whose names Emma recognized from newspaper headlines. "Emma, darling," Catherine Blake appeared at her elbow, elegant in emerald green silk that complemented her silver hair perfectly. "You look absolutely radiant. That dress is perfection on you." "Thank you, Catherine. You look stunning as always." "Come, there are so many people I want you to meet." Catherine began steering her toward a group of well-dressed women near the cocktail station. "These are some of my dearest friends. We've been supporting children's literacy causes together for over 20 years. The next hour was a whirlwind of introductions, small talk, and carefully navigating conversations with people who clearly knew more about wine vintages and European vacation homes than Emma ever would. But she found herself holding her own, especially when the conversation turned to education policy or childhood development issues she actually understood. "Emma, you simply must tell Mrs. Vanderbilt about your charter school initiative," Catherine said, introducing her to a tiny woman dripping in diamonds who had to be in her 80s. "Oh yes, dear. I read about it in Manhattan Weekly. Quite impressive for someone so young," Mrs. Vanderbilt said, her sharp eyes assessing Emma with obvious interest. "Tell me, what makes you think you can succeed where so many others have failed?" Emma took a deep breath, channeling all her passion for education reform. "Because I'm not approaching it from a theoretical standpoint, Mrs. Vanderbilt. I've been in the trenches for 6 years. I've seen which methods actually work with diverse learners, which community partnerships make the difference between success and failure, and how to build programs that serve the whole child, not just test scores." "Interesting. And how do you plan to fund this venture?" "A combination of private donations, corporate sponsorships, and innovative partnerships with local businesses that can provide both financial support and real-world learning opportunities for students." Emma warmed to her subject, forgetting her nerves in the face of genuine interest. "For example, we're planning a partnership with local restaurants where high school students can learn culinary arts, business management, and hospitality while earning actual wages." "Brilliant!" Mrs. Vanderbilt's eyes lit up. "Catherine, this girl has a head on her shoulders. No wonder Nathaniel snatched her up." As dinner was served, Emma found herself seated between James Chen and a prominent education journalist who peppered her with questions about public school reform. The conversation was stimulating and gave her confidence that she truly belonged at this table, contributing meaningfully to discussions that could impact thousands of children's lives. But her comfort was shattered during the dessert course when a voice behind her made every muscle in her body tense. Well, well, the famous Brooklyn teacher who captured Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. Emma turned to see a man who could only be Bradley Blake, tall like Nathaniel, but with softer features and eyes that held a calculating coldness that immediately put her on guard. "Bradley," Nathaniel said, his voice carrying a warning edge. "I didn't know you were attending tonight. Wouldn't miss it for the world, cousin, especially when there's such interesting entertainment." Bradley's smile was all teeth and no warmth as he looked at Emma. "I've been so curious to meet the woman who accomplished what no other woman in Manhattan could manage." "And what's that?" Emma asked, though every instinct told her she didn't want to hear the answer. "Getting Nathaniel Blake to settle down. I mean, what are the odds? A public school teacher from Brooklyn, no family connections, no trust fund." Bradley paused meaningfully. "It's almost like something out of a fairy tale, isn't it?" "Bradley." Nathaniel's voice was dangerously quiet. "What? I'm just marveling at the romance of it all. I mean, how did you two really meet? The charity auction story is charming, but I've been to every major charity event in the city for the past 5 years, and I don't remember seeing Emma at any of them before this spring." Emma felt ice forming in her veins. Around their table, conversations were quieting as people sensed drama brewing. "We prefer to keep our relationship private," Emma said carefully. Of course. "Privacy is so important." Bradley signaled for more wine from a passing waiter. "Though I have to admit, I'm curious about the timeline. 6 months of dating, but the first photo of you two together was from the Four Seasons Gala just a month ago. That's quite a whirlwind romance. Some relationships move quickly when they're meant to be." James Chen interjected smoothly, clearly trying to diffuse the situation. "Oh, absolutely. Though I can't help wondering." "Emma, what was it about Nathaniel that first attracted you? His charming personality, his dedication to education, or perhaps—" Bradley's smile turned predatory. "His bank account?" The table went dead silent. Emma felt like she was drowning in front of 500 of New York's most influential people. "That's enough," Nathaniel said, starting to rise from his chair. "No, it's fine," Emma said, placing a hand on his arm while looking directly at Bradley. Her voice was steady, even though her heart was hammering. "I'm happy to answer that question." Bradley leaned back with obvious satisfaction, clearly expecting her to fumble or become defensive. "What first attracted me to Nathaniel was his intelligence," Emma said clearly, her teacher's voice carrying to nearby tables. "Not his business intelligence, though that's impressive, but his emotional intelligence. His ability to listen to people, really listen, and hear what they're not saying. His genuine interest in making the world better, not just making money." She paused, looking around the table at the faces watching her. "But what made me fall in love with him was discovering that underneath all the suits and board meetings and public expectations, he's a man who still dreams about teaching children, who remembers the names of my students and asks about their progress, who shows up at my school with coffee and pastries for my colleagues just because he knows they're working late." The table was completely silent now, but it was a different kind of silence, attentive, moved, rather than uncomfortable. "You want to know about the timeline, Bradley? You're right that our relationship moved quickly. Because when you find someone who makes you want to be the best version of yourself, when you find someone who sees your dreams as equally important as their own, you don't waste time playing games or following arbitrary social conventions." Emma stood, her voice growing stronger with each word. "And yes, Nathaniel has money, lots of it. But if you think that's what this is about, then you don't know me at all, and you certainly don't know him. Because the man I fell in love with is the one who told me he dreamed of teaching, who lights up when he talks about his late brother, who treats my students like they're the most important people in the world, because he knows they're important to me." She looked directly at Bradley, her brown eyes blazing. "So to answer your original question, yes, it is like a fairy tale. But not because a poor girl got rescued by a rich prince. Because two people found each other despite coming from different worlds and chose to build something real together. The applause started slowly, James Chen clapping with obvious admiration, then Catherine joining in, then spreading across nearby tables until half the ballroom was applauding Emma's words. Bradley's face had gone red, but before he could respond, the evening's host took the microphone to begin the program's formal presentations. As the lights dimmed for the first speaker, Nathaniel leaned close to Emma's ear. "That was incredible," he whispered. "I've never been prouder to be with anyone in my entire life." "I meant every word," she whispered back. "I know. That's what made it so perfect." But even as Emma basked in the warmth of his praise and the supportive smiles from around their table, she couldn't shake the feeling that Bradley Blake wasn't done causing trouble. Her instincts proved correct during the cocktail reception following the formal program. Emma was chatting with the education journalist about potential interview opportunities when she overheard Bradley's voice carrying from a nearby group. "Just saying, doesn't anyone else find the timing suspicious? Nathaniel's been under pressure from the board and his mother to settle down, and suddenly he's engaged to someone nobody's ever heard of." Emma's blood turned to ice. She excused herself from her conversation and moved closer, staying just out of sight behind a marble pillar. "I mean, think about it logically," Bradley continued, his voice slightly slurred from champagne. "The most eligible bachelor in Manhattan, who's managed to avoid commitment for 32 years, suddenly falls head over heels for a public school teacher he supposedly met at a charity auction. An auction, by the way, that I attended, and I definitely didn't see her there." "Bradley, you're being ridiculous," someone protested. "They're clearly in love. You saw how she defended him tonight." "Oh, she's good, I'll give her that. Very convincing performance. But I did some digging, and guess what? Emma Richardson was working as a translator at the Four Seasons Gala, the same gala where they supposedly announced their engagement. Isn't that interesting?" Emma felt like the floor was dissolving beneath her feet. Someone had figured it out. Someone knew. "What are you suggesting?" another voice asked. "I'm suggesting that my dear cousin might have made an arrangement with a beautiful, intelligent woman who needed money, and he needed a fiancée. A business transaction, if you will." "That's a serious accusation, Bradley." "Is it? Think about it. She gets to pay off her student loans and fund her little school project. He gets to satisfy the board and his mother's pressure to settle down. Everyone wins. Except for the part where they'd be lying to everyone, including their families. Please, rich men have been making convenient arrangements for centuries. The only difference is that Nathaniel's arrangement might actually be working out for him. She's beautiful, smart, charming, and knows how to play the part perfectly." Emma had heard enough. She turned to slip away, but came face to face with a woman she didn't recognize. Mid-40s, sharp-eyed, holding a small recording device. "Ms. Richardson?" the woman said with a predatory smile. "Jennifer Walsh, New York Post. I'd love to get your response to some interesting allegations I've just heard about your relationship with Mr. Blake." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Emma stared at the recorder, then at the journalist's expectant face, then at the crowd of people who were beginning to notice the confrontation. I need to find Nathaniel," Emma managed. "Of course you do. But first, would you like to comment on suggestions that your engagement might be more of a business arrangement than a love story?" "No comment," Emma said firmly, but her voice shook. "What about the allegation that you were working as hired help at the gala where you supposedly met? That seems like quite a coincidence." Emma's chest felt tight. She couldn't breathe properly. The ballroom suddenly felt suffocating, filled with too many watching eyes and whispered conversations. "Emma?" Nathaniel's voice cut through her panic. He appeared at her side, immediately sensing something was wrong. "What's going on?" "Mr. Blake." Jennifer Walsh turned her attention to him like a shark scenting blood. "Perfect timing. I was just asking your fiancé about some interesting theories regarding the nature of your relationship." "What theories?" Nathaniel's voice was dangerously quiet. "Well, there seems to be some question about how you really met, and whether your engagement might be more transactional than romantic." Nathaniel's entire body went rigid. Emma saw his hands clench into fists at his sides. "I think you should leave," he said to the journalist, his voice carrying the kind of authority that had built empires. "This is a public event, Mr. Blake, and the public has a right to know if one of their most prominent citizens is perpetrating a fraud." "There's no fraud here," Nathaniel said firmly. "Emma and I are genuinely engaged, genuinely in love, and genuinely none of your business." "Then you won't mind if I publish what I heard tonight? About arranged relationships and business transactions?" Emma watched Nathaniel's face go through a series of expressions: anger, calculation, and finally, resignation. "Publish whatever you want," he said quietly. "The truth will speak for itself." But as the journalist walked away with obvious satisfaction, Emma knew their perfect fairy tale was about to become a very public nightmare. "Nathaniel," she whispered, "what are we going to do?" He turned to look at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw real fear in his storm-gray eyes. "I don't know," he admitted, "but whatever happens, we face it together." As they stood there in the middle of Manhattan's most elegant ballroom, surrounded by the glittering crowd that had accepted their love story so completely, Emma realized that the hardest part of their journey was just beginning. Because falling in love had been magical, but proving that love was real when the whole world thought it was fake, that was going to require a miracle.